With India set to host the AI Impact Summit in February, there is no better person than the person who's put together the previous AI Summit in France. Anne Bouverot is the French President's Special Envoy for the AI Action Summit that was held last year, with economist Philippe Arion, who won the Nobel Prize recently, chaired the commission that published the report on the AI ambitions for France. Give us a little bit of insight into what the rest of the world is expecting from the AI Summit.
We're pleased to have the decision of the next summit in India. The prior summits had all been held in the Northern Hemisphere, and we really wanted for the next summit to not ignore all the countries, the citizens, the Southern Hemisphere.
A person who's not part of this policy maker world, why should they care about the AI Summit?
I particularly like the name that has been chosen, the AI Impact Summit, because the technology is maturing. So now it is actually a perfect moment to be really focusing on impact. President Macron will be coming to Delhi because 2026 will also be the year of innovation. It's really a great opportunity to celebrate historical links between our two countries.
Is AI a bubble?
At the Bletchley Park Summit the year before, there were very dire predictions that, of course, we're more than 2 years after, and that hasn't happened.
If you were a 20-year-old student today in France, what would you advise them to study? And welcome to the AI Futures podcast. We're delighted to have you here with us.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. We are looking forward to this conversation. I want to start us off with a broad question, as I like to do, which is your perspective on the current state of the global AI landscape, key developments, key trends, key challenges that you have seen develop over the last year, maybe post the summit that you organized.
Yeah, of course. Well, clearly the innovation keeps apace. New capabilities keep on the research front and on the product front keep being put forward with great progress on the reasoning capacities of models, for examples, and on the what we call the multimodal, which means it's not only text, but it's also voice, it's also video. So all these areas of innovation are really continuing with great speed. We see most of this innovation coming from the US and from China, but we also see some innovation coming from other regions. In France, we have Mistral. There's a number of other companies and startups around the field of AI as well, including in India and in many countries. We see a somewhat slower adoption in companies because it takes a bit more time. I mean, consumers are really using AI day in, day out for lots of services, lots of solutions. They've become daily companions. You go there for advice, for recipes, for travel, for help with schoolwork, for everything. Adoption at scale in companies takes a bit longer for a number of reasons, but is proceeding. And we see investments continuing with numbers that are unbelievable numbers. The field is really continuing to develop and be extremely active.
And what do you see as some of the key challenges that have maybe arisen that the world was not thinking about maybe a year or two ago that seem to now top of mind?
I think at the Paris AI Summit almost a year ago, it was the first global conversation on AI and energy and climate. We've had climate conferences for years. We've had AI conferences before. It's hard to remember because now it's really top of mind, the energy consumption and impact of AI. But Paris last year was the very first global conversation on that. It hasn't abated. It's continuing to be a topic with race to get more energy for data centers and for AI, and countries trying to organize their own energy supply and data center plans and AI development plans. That's the big topics of the moment. The topic of AI and work has been a topic for a while. At the Bletchley Park Summit the year before, there were very dire predictions that half of the jobs would disappear within 2 years. Of course, we're more than 2 years after, and that hasn't happened. However, the potential is there for great disruption, for tasks to be automated, and in particular for work to be done differently, new jobs being created, but also jobs being displaced. And there's a lot of attention to that on the policy front, and workers everywhere are wondering what this will mean for them. And I think it will mostly mean new jobs and changed jobs, but we have to be very careful. And if I have to pick a third one, I think it's maybe the societal impacts of AI. What will it change in education? What will it change in healthcare? There's great hopes and great benefits, but there's also some care that we need to place to make sure equal and not just to the benefit of some happy few.
And for people who are not working in the field of AI like you are or I am, I think the jobs piece and the future of work as it pertains to now developments coming out of AI is of course top of mind. But let me ask you about the energy piece first, the challenge you mentioned first. A lot of people draw parallels between now what's happening in the world of AI and this AI revolution, this AI wave, to the first industrial revolution. And of course, one of the great accomplishments of that industrial revolution that starts off primarily in Western Europe and the UK is that of scale of production and efficiency. And that's the story that really drives that industrial revolution. So, where handicrafts get replaced by machine made products, but now you can make tons of them and at cheaper cost. So, you end up serving a lot more people, all of that. 200 years later, one of the things that we've clearly realized is that one of the things that got ignored at that time was the energy or the ecological cost of that high scale of production. Coal, the use of coal and other fossil fuels that then becomes mainstream. And today, as you rightly pointed out, we are doing COP summits and others to figure out, okay, what are we going to do to maybe undo or at least mitigate the impact of those 200 years of rapid industrial revolution driven growth. Do you find that AI is, and the work that has happened in the last year, where data centers are coming up literally every day, new energy sources are being dedicated and diverted towards data centers to power the processing needs of LLMs? Do you feel like we are on a similar path as that industrial revolution era?
So I don't know whether it's a similar path, but clearly this is one of the big impacts of AI. Of course, we see our phones and we see the questions that we can ask to the bots, and we see the industrial applications. But these models to be created consume a lot of energy, and there's a lot of hardware also and raw materials that go into building the GPUs, the computer capacity that is needed inside the data centers to train these models and then to make them run. And that, yes, is in humongous numbers. As you say, data centers are mushrooming, especially, but they're not mushrooms, but they're coming up everywhere. And you have more attention probably than you had during the industrial revolution to that. So the big data center operators, they want to be mindful about carbon footprint of their data centers. So they rush to get renewable nuclear or other cleaner sources of energy, which is good. And in France, we're lucky that we have, thanks to both nuclear and renewables, a lot of carbon-free energy. I think 95% of our electricity production is carbon-free. But in countries and places where you don't have that, then you have an appropriation of these renewable or carbon-free energies for the data center and the data centers and the AI sector. And it makes it more difficult for the other industries to find sources of carbon-free energy, for example. So that is a point we need to pay attention to, and we need to ensure we think about this transformation everywhere and not just in the field of AI.
And on the question of jobs, right? I think again, one can draw parallels with the Industrial Revolution, where factories, of course, start to employ people. But at the same time, a lot of people lose jobs as technology comes in, and the whole Luddites originates at that time. People who are opposed to the adoption of technology at that time because of the displacement it's creating. While you correctly mentioned that jobs have not disappeared at the rate that maybe the Bletchley Park Summit might have been anticipated or thought of, but at the same time, you did mention that companies have been slow at adoption. Is your sense that as companies start to adopt AI more, and of course they take their time, as you were rightly saying, in doing pilots, getting their data prepared to use AI and all of that, and that takes time. Is your sense that as adoption in companies and the corporate sector goes up rapidly, which it will eventually,
Mm-hmm.
otherwise our AI firms will be in trouble,
Yes.
and the billions of investments that have gone in will be in trouble. As that goes up, do you think the impact of AI on jobs will accelerate maybe very quickly?
So in terms of a macro view, I don't necessarily expect that. And that was the work I did with Philippe Aguillon, and that helped him. He's done many more things, but that helped him get his Nobel Prize, was to look at innovation across ages. So pre-generative AI, but already the various waves of digital innovation, where yes, you get jobs that are being displaced, and yes, you get people that need to retrain, but you also tend to get a lot of new jobs. Cybersecurity, we now know, is very important. It's actually going to get even more important with AI opening up more points of vulnerability. And you do want to use AI and get its benefits, but you do want to protect, of course, the assets of your companies and your administrations, so that you're not vulnerable to cyber attacks. Similarly, maybe in coding, in code development, which is one of the areas where we can expect to see a lot of benefits from using AI. Well, you then have, once code is produced by these AI systems, you do need to check and you do need to validate before you put it into industrial applications, and that will sort of change the work of IT engineers. But I really don't think we should stop training for IT engineers. We need them, and we'll continue to need them. And one thing that you made this parallel with the industrial revolutions and the Luddites, and I'm not seeing this. I'm not seeing unions or workers saying, I refuse to use AI. Maybe even on the contrary, you have this tendency or trend that that's some people call shadow AI, where even if your company is not mandating a use of AI or having a general program, you as an individual worker come to work with ideas about how to use these tools and start using them, even if your bosses don't know that you're doing that. That's why it's called shadow. But it's great. It shows a desire to adopt and to find the places where it can bring benefits.
And that takes me to my last question on this broad conversation that we've had on challenges and opportunities that AI is presenting. You mentioned that, of course, workers as individuals, I think students, I dare say policymakers, are also using AI, right, for their daily work, their daily tasks, research, summarizing, drafting, things like that. But one of the other implications that people are starting to talk about is the fact that people are maybe becoming over dependent now on using AI tools without applying their own brains. And again, at the risk of overextending an analogy, which makes it useless sometimes, but the
Bit
industrial,
clearer.
one can argue, the moment people moved away from physical work, it also brings an onslaught of health diseases for people, because people are no longer using their bodies physically the way we've done for decades, centuries at that time, and that's led to things like obesity, things like heart attacks, things that were unknown maybe to humans prior, but really out of the use of technology in the industrial revolution, one can argue that a certain lifestyle set of changes happened that caused some negative ramifications also, while many positive ones as well. In the case of our mental muscles now, right? Unlike our physical muscles that maybe became less relevant during the Industrial Revolution, is your sense that as we start using AI, and this is more of a personal question really, maybe not a policy one, sense that we are at risk, unless we think very actively about this, of, much like we lost some part of our physical strengths as humans, that we might lose our mental acuities with this over dependence on LLMs and AIs doing a lot of that initial research and working and drafting, and people are saying books and songs and poems are now going to get drafted using AI, right? Are we at risk of that as humans?
That's a great question. I mean, it goes in many directions. I mean, for example, one of the when you talk about jobs, people say jobs in the tech sector are going to this of the jobs that is really exploding. At least, and I don't know if it's the case in India, because you already have a lot of yoga instructors. But in France, in Europe, in the US, that's a job that is really creating new jobs. People are leaving their jobs and becoming a yoga instructor or other forms of health related
Gotcha.
jobs, to also help people who have more stress, maybe in this world that is more and more digital, to adapt. And people are going to fitness centers that didn't exist before, maybe as a way also to find a way to exert their physical muscles. So, but that's something that we need to keep a close eye on. I believe we need to ensure that as part of the education system, there are discussions on that. For example, I advocate for teachers to ask their students to explicitly use AI at home to do homework, and then come back to class and discuss it with their fellow students to find things like, oh, all of our texts look very similar, to find things like, well, where really is the creativity and how should we use the tools differently? So having sort of learning a little distance to the tools, I think is a very important muscle to build. Finally, maybe one of the areas where I am a bit worried is about the way we work with one another, the socialization, because there's an easiness to these tools. They always agree with you. They always say you that you're right, that
Admire you.
maybe you, yeah, they admire you, and maybe you didn't pronounce this. You're learning German, and maybe your pronunciation wasn't great, but you'll try again, and they'll help you, and you'll get there. And they take your side when you confide to them about problems with someone else. And what does it mean for children to grow up with tools like this, especially in families where we tend to have now less children, and if we don't disagree with people our age as we grow up, what does it mean for us as social human beings when we grow up? That's one of the pieces of research that I think we need to really be mindful of.
Yeah. And I must add, when I was writing my book as well, which I mentioned to you and earlier, again, three of the people I've spoken to: Philip Ayon, who you know well,
Yes.
Joel Mocha, who won the Nobel Prize with him.
Yes.
My first podcast was with Professor Mocha and Daniel.
Wonderful.
All of whom come from, let's say, that intellectual tradition of, okay, what has helped countries and societies advance, right? And one of the things that it stuck in my head, and I think Professor Ahyon also said, Professor Mocha puts it as, when I asked him, okay, tell me one thing, Professor Mocha, that you think has made nations great or successful. And he said, nations or societies that challenge convention, where the non-conformists are encouraged almost and not sort of shut out of society as outcasts. Those are societies, if there was one thing that you could point to, those are societies that over history, or the long arc of history, have done well. And I worry that exactly what you were saying, that if you were to believe the Nobel Prize winners in economics from this year, are key to driving advancement.
I think it's a really good point. Yeah. Excellent.
We've discussed some of the challenges. I want to end this section with a question about what are you most excited about in terms of AI developments from, let's say, the last year or last few months, that you're hoping that this coming year we'll see more of.
Well, AI and health and AI and science. I mean, there's really lots of great benefit. I was in India in November before the Christmas holidays. I saw some great applications on AI helping with the early detection of tuberculosis or of potential blindness linked with diabetes. In France, I've seen some great applications on early detection of breast cancer. I mean, there's fantastic applications that can help save lives and also catch diseases earlier on and have more personalized treatments so that we can live longer and healthier lives. I think that's really a great area of hope, and we're already seeing the early benefits, and we'll see more.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that, actually. And in such a country like India, where healthcare is both an increasing need but also an underserved need traditionally, I think a lot of us are hoping that AI's application in healthcare can really help resolve that, and maybe along with education also. Where personalized education could really help students who are otherwise in very rote type systems, right, and not personalized. Again, going back to the industrial era of like mass education, right? So um, I agree. Let me now move to the piece I really am excited to talk to you about also, which is the Paris AI Summit. As India prepares for the February summit, Of course, a lot of people here, both policymakers and otherwise, people from the think tank world, others who have been trying to help bubble up the agenda for the AI summit in Feb, have looked back at Paris. Of course, Prime Minister Modi and President Macron co-launched that summit last year, as we all closely. I mean, but really behind the scenes, you had put it all together and your team. And so, first of all, thank you and gratitude
Okay.
for such a wonderful summit that I think at least sparked a lot of conversations in India and I think the rest of the world on topics that might not have been covered in prior summits. So, thank you for that. I think conceptualizing the Paris summit so beautifully and so, I would say, inclusively. Um, let's talk about the key takeaways and action items from that summit. Give a sense of where that summit concluded and what some key takeaways and action items were from the Paris summit last year.
As you say, the summit was co-chaired by Prime Minister Modi with President Macron, and we had heads of states from all over the world and CEOs and researchers, and this multi-stakeholder structure was really very helpful. I know this is what is continuing in Delhi for Feb. Because in a way, heads of states come because they can meet CEOs of tech companies, and CEOs of tech companies come because they can meet Nobel prizes, and Nobel prizes come because they can meet government leaders and heads of NGOs. So everyone is happy to be there with that one focus area in this domain that is, of course, so exciting and moving so fast with so many potential areas of impact. It took place at a very particular moment from a geopolitical perspective with the new administration in the US. If we go back to that, on day 2 of the new US administration, there was the Stargate announcement, $500 billion of investment in US AI infrastructure, with this message that we, the US, are the world leader and no one will ever compete with us. And then a week later, the news of the DeepSeek model in China for a ridiculous amount of money, having developed a state-of-the-art model. And for us, these two pieces of news, when we went into the summit at the beginning of February, were actually a great scenery to both show that the race was still open. At least China, which was seen as an underdog, had managed to come closer to being a really important actor in the field and is. But also, it was a way to show that others can have a very meaningful role in AI. And we showcased startups from all over the world, of course, Mistral in France, and Helsing in Germany, and Cohere in Canada, and startups from everywhere, and large companies using AI, showing appetite, I would say, from people around the world to be actors and not just customers in the world of AI. And that is true for India, that is true for France, that is true for countries in Africa, that is true really around the world. And that's one of the big takeaways for me from the Paris summit. And then there were a number of announcements on the French scene, and you'll have announcements that are very relevant for India, because that's a way to boost both the confidence and the appetite for India for AI in your own country. We saw that in France. I'm sure you'll see that in India. And we also announced a number of very important global initiatives, like a coalition for sustainable AI, a coalition of the willing, wanting to do everything they can to help mitigate the climate impact of AI and use AI to benefit resource optimization, be that water, electricity, entrance for agriculture, etc. We also launched a public interest AI foundation called Current AI. India is one of the founding members. Here, the intent is to ensure that we don't only have market-driven, business-driven use cases, but also public interest use cases like multilingualism, like in the healthcare sector, etc. And we were particularly pleased to have the announcement and the decision of the next summit in India, because we felt that the prior summits had all been held in countries in the Northern Hemisphere, and we really wanted for the next summit to not ignore all the countries and very valuable questions and all the citizens of the Southern Hemisphere. So that was really something that I was particularly proud that it was one of the outcomes of the Paris summit. So President Macron will be coming to Delhi. He'll be coming both for a state visit prior to the opening of the summit and then for the summit itself, because 2026 will also be the year of innovation, the Franco-Indian or Indo-French year of innovation. So it's really a great opportunity to celebrate also the links, the historical links, and the very active relationship between our two countries.
Yeah, which I think a lot of us are excited about. Mentioning, I do write a little bit about the France-India relationship, and I think this year of innovation, I think the idea that startups, there's a lot of exchange between the startups, the two countries, I think is also a very encouraging sign. Of course, there's historically very established ties between French and Indian companies uh, as well. So I think it's an exciting moment for the relationship also. One of the things I want to ask you about the piece that you mentioned about the summits moving from, let's say, the more developed world or the global north to countries in the southern hemisphere, and India being, of course, the first one
Mm,
of many that will host this summit from this region. One of the things I've noticed, Anne, that I wanted to ask your views on is
mm,
for the last year and maybe two, there's been a lot of conversation about the concentration of AI infrastructure. How AI chips are largely being manufactured or designed and manufactured by a few companies that happen to be
mm,
concentrated in either the US or certain parts of East Asia. Really, one of the and of course we've spoken about the energy implications and all of that, but the piece that I wanted to ask you about is the talent piece. And as I was looking at the India France relationship also and what France is doing in AI, one of the things that came up was, of course, the way President Macron and uh, I think his team thought about attracting French talent back to France. And I think maybe what we are not talking about enough on the global stage outside of the US or China, concentration of talent sitting in only one or two geographies, mainly in this world. And if others have to be part of that innovation game in AI, have to customize the solutions either on healthcare or other sectors as well, which will require customization. You'll need some of the best talent to be sitting not just in one or two countries, but really across the world. How do you think about that problem? And maybe we can also then segue into what the AI summit in India can maybe do on that particular topic as well.
Yeah, I think talent is absolutely key, and there's no reason that talent should be limited to one or two countries. I mean, of course, talent is equally distributed at birth, and then it's about the education system first, and many countries have great education systems. In India, you do, and you produce brilliant engineers and scientists and researchers that are really known worldwide, and we have great. We produce great people in France as well, and many other countries as well. There's a big attraction and pull for talent. The model in the US has really been to, of course, educate American citizens, but also to be an attraction pull for talent from all over the world, and very, very true for India, very, very true for all the European countries, very true for all the world. That is changing a little bit for a number of reasons. The US doesn't seem that keen on doing that, or certainly not to that the level they were doing it previously. They're actually making it very difficult for some people to come or to stay, even the best and brightest. And actually, I think we should take this as an opportunity. We cannot just take this as an opportunity in a passive way. It's not just, well, hey, you can't go to the US, so you'll have to stay. It's not very motivating. But we should take this opportunity to have great, exciting projects, public projects, private projects in our own countries that motivate people to want to stay or to want to come back and to really spend a number of years doing things that matter to them and that will also matter to their countries. I think this is really an evolution that I'm seeing, that there's a rise in the sentiment of oh yes, I need to do something for, and I want to do something for my country, and by the way, if I find an opportunity to do it in my country and to exert my brain and my trade, I will do that amongst the best and brightest, and I think we should absolutely take advantage of that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think it's a great clarion call in a way for countries to both be attractive to the best talent from within their countries and outside. There's no reason that there should just be one, let's say, Silicon Valley of innovation and not many. I think, especially given the geopolitical circumstances of today. Now move to the India AI Summit. You know, you've done the hard work of pulling off a successful summit, and I know you've been visiting India and helping even the conceptualization of the India AI Summit. What are your expectations, and maybe not just yours, but you can also maybe give us a little bit of insight into what the rest of the world is expecting from the AI Summit?
Well, first of all, I mean, my thoughts are with the team working on putting together the India Summit these days. I mean, a year ago, I was absolutely exhausted and working day and night with the whole of the team to, and it's an incredible amount of work. So I really think about them and tell them whenever I can that once it will be over, they can rest, but they're doing a fantastic job. So
That's not
that's
really
the
true.
first thing.
They won't really be able to rest either.
No, well,
But somehow
a
you
little bit.
have to give them that hope. That's right.
Yes, and then I particularly like the name that has been chosen, Impact, the AI Impact Summit, because I mean AI is a great field of research. It's a great technology. You have lots of wonderful tools, but in a way that's intellectually very interesting. What's really important is what impact it will have in people's lives. I mean, is it really going to have an impact in terms of healthcare? Is it really going to have an impact in terms of education? What will it mean for improving particular fields like agriculture, like aeronautics? Like I could go on and on. That's really what matters. And of course, it's not to disregard any of the previous summit, including the one I I was working on. It's because the technology is maturing, so now it is actually a perfect moment to be really focusing on impact, and also to be focusing on impact for not just people in the rich economies, but for people all around the world. So I think that's a really good focus area and name for the summit. I know there's lots of things being done in terms of attracting innovators, heads of large companies, small companies, startups. There's in the particular relationship between France and India, there are partnerships between incubators in both countries to make sure there's exchange programs that will be set up. In the health sector, there's a partnership that is being developed for sharing of data while protecting confidentiality and helping develop further research and therefore further benefits. So there's a number of amazing projects that are being worked on, and I can't wait to be there and see that live.
So I think that's great. I think impact with the focus on, you know, countries from all over the world and not just, let's say, the richer or the more developed countries, etc. as well. What can India learn, and from now I'm talking about literally the few days of the summit, and not just the entire run-up, but the days of the summit as well. What can India learn from maybe the lessons or experiences of your team and yours?
In the few days of the summit, it's an incredibly busy period because everyone is there. People come to the pre-planned sessions and of course to the things they have registered for, but then they also meet with other people and they say, oh, I hadn't seen you in ages, or I've been meaning to be in contact with you. So that's the thing that you really don't plan for, but that happens, and that helps make it really a moment in time that everybody remembers. I just was discussing yesterday with a brilliant researcher who told me that at the Paris summit, she took the decision that she was going to make a change in her career and move from a larger tech company to creating a startup. And so that's just a very small example, but those things happen at summits because you're away from your day job, you meet with other people, and you realize that you could be doing something else.
And one of the goals, of course, is inclusion. We've discussed some of the others, sustainability, impact, and one of the goals of the AI summit is also inclusion, in line with what you also suggest. Sometimes summits, especially summits as high profile, sometimes as like the AI summits you've held in India is holding now. Some of the same people, some of the same experts, some of the same researchers, same founders, company CEOs, and we will be there. But really, one of our goals here for the India AI Summit is to make sure that the broader public, the broader members of the public, are also engaged. So let me ask you this. Why do you think a person who's not part of this policy maker, AI startup, AI, the NVIDIAs of the world, why should they care about the AI Summit? And what do you think they could get out of attending and engaging with a summit like that?
But what we found, certainly in Paris, is that AI is a very interesting topic for everyone. I mean, everyone has had some interaction or has heard about AI, and people have a mixture of anxiety, of hopes, of
And wonder.
illusions, of a number of sentiments and questions about AI, and they want to have opportunities to discuss them. So they will come to learn and they will come to discuss. And what we tried to do for the Paris summit, because not everyone can come to Delhi on those days, we also tried to have what we call side events during the summit that took place all over France, and I'm sure you'll have that all over India, where people could come and have discussions locally with some of the experts traveling, but also just with the people in their own city or region that have some knowledge about AI. And that was very successful. We had what we called a Tour de France of AI that was organized by some of our business associations. That was hugely successful. So the appetite, we actually had more people at all the events than we had planned for, and problems with just space not being big enough and things like that. So they want to come, they are interested. Then you need to make sure you can have interesting discussions, that they can watch the events even if they're not in the room. You need to not create frustration, but the appetite, certainly I found last February, was really there, and it's great. It shouldn't be just the usual suspects and the people that already meet with each other. Otherwise, they won't even come because it would be just another summit for them.
Absolutely. And I think much like the Tour de France piece that you mentioned, I think India has also been doing a lot of the regional summits all over the country in the smaller towns in order to, I think, both get inputs from, but also then share the key developments in the world of AI. Because as you rightly said today, any dinner conversation, even with, it can be with children. I can tell you, I've had
Exactly.
conversations with 5-year-old, 6-year-old children about AI today, and with 90-year-old grandparents and great grandparents. And so there's a lot of curiosity, I think, across ages, across all aspects of society, really, about what this new phenomenon of AI will mean for everyone. No, great. I'm going to now move to our rapid fire segment, which is the quick series of questions that you can give short answers to. Let's get started.
Okay.
So, Anne, explain the AI Impact Summit to a 15-year-old high school student.
It's a great summit with people from all over the world to Delhi to discuss the current state and the future of AI.
Is AI a bubble?
Probably for some of the companies that have humongous levels of investment, but it will have really it is having and will have a lasting impact on society.
In 5 years, do you expect the AI industry to be more concentrated than it is today or less?
I hope no.
That's
I
the
hope less.
honest answer. What's more important, to be at the center of AI innovation or at the center of AI adoption and AI diffusion?
Adoption, but you need to be able to shape that adoption. So it shouldn't be passive adoption.
Should we be looking to build more and more power plants and nuclear plants to power our AI data centers so this growth can grow and continue the way it has been at the pace? Or should we be focusing on making our AI LLMs more efficient in terms of the usage of?
We should definitely be focusing on the efficiency and more frugal AI. Then every country needs to plan for its development of energy needs, but there's a lot of work to be done on frugality and efficiency.
And practically speaking, given the optimism around AI, especially in the business and industry circles, do you think we'll run out of energy before we fulfill our AI ambitions?
I don't think so. I think these things have a way of actually balancing each other. We'll hit a limit maybe on energy at some point, and then we'll optimize things, and then we'll have maybe more energy and do more things. I mean, so no, I think great innovations come from acknowledging the constraints and being clever.
Very nicely put, by the way. I
Thank
think
you.
if a new Silicon Valley was to come up somewhere in the world, where do you think, let's say other than China?
Well, clearly, I mean, in Bangalore could be one. I also think that a hub in Europe between maybe France, Germany, Switzerland, that could be one. Nairobi, I don't know. A couple ideas.
Let's talk about countries' AI strategies very quickly. And I've strategically put this in the rapid fire section so that we can handle them very quickly. Which country's AI strategy are you impressed with the most?
Well, France's, of course. I wrote the last one.
Whose AI strategy has surprised you the most?
Well, the latest US AI strategy is very different from the previous one, so there's an element of surprise. It's also very well thought through.
Of the global, city-states and small countries that have traditionally either been the Switzerlands or the trading entrepôts of the world, or then financial centers and hubs of the world, which ones do you think are adapting the fastest to compete in AI?
Well, Singapore always tops the ranks of the most AI-ready country. They're so good at training, at innovating, at adopting. They're really very impressive. But also Korea, but Singapore is really impressive.
One thing Europe, and then specifically maybe also France, needs to change about their AI strategy.
More risk appetite, more appetite for risk, and more pace or faster pace.
One, or since you mentioned two for Europe, one or two things that India needs to change.
Well, I don't want to give lessons to anyone.
No. I
But
think we have to learn from each other.
I think getting a better advantage of the great people you train. I mean, the fact that they leave and do wonderful careers in other countries, there has to be a way to take benefit of that a bit more in India.
I purposely left them for the last, but one thing the US needs to change and one thing the Chinese need to change in their AI.
Well, I believe we this will be a little bit longer, but innovation comes from not being conformist and also from working with others. And I think both countries need to be in different ways better at working with others. And in the meantime, if you allow me, I think we, France, India, all other countries in the world, need to work more with one another. And I'm very pleased that we're doing that, for example, with the joint year of innovation between France and India.
I wasn't planning for this, but I'm going to ask you this given your last response, which I absolutely agree with. I think countries like France, Europe, and other countries in the global south need. In the challenge to manage this almost like seemingly paradoxical objectives, there's digital sovereignty that you want, but then you also want to adopt and diffuse all the latest technologies that have been developed often just one or two centers in the world. Two or three things that you think countries like France and India could do to balance these two.
Well, I believe you need to go all in for adoption, but that you need to keep choice. So you need to adopt in the areas where it's very important, and then you need to reserve some areas for innovation. And on innovation, you need to be in a partnership mode with your neighboring countries, with other countries. And so some of the announcements that will be made in Delhi about partnerships between France, India, Japan, Brazil, I think that's great.
Now I want to come to students. If you were a 20-year-old student today in France, what would you advise them to study?
Well, I'm a big fan of scientific studies for everyone and for girls who tend to underinvest in that. I think that's super important as a predictor of success. And that needs to be matched with what we call social skills. So I think you need to learn to understand the technology and be able to work in the field, even if you're not an IT developer, and also have the social skills to be able to learn new things because jobs will change and will keep changing. So you need to be able to adapt. So I'd say those two things.
Similar question to what you just addressed, rather, but asked differently. Do you think in the future, we've lived in a world of specialization now for a long time? The future belongs to specialists or generalists?
I don't know. I think there's a case for both.
A
But
combination.
there's a risk with being a shallow. There's a risk with that.
Yeah. I think we've addressed this. Will AI create more jobs than it displaces? I know you said
Maybe.
jobs nature will change, but will it displace more?
Yeah, but I don't think it's a given that it will decrease the number of jobs. So maybe it will create more. That's what Philippe Aghion believes, by the way.
Which application of AI keeps you up at night, worried?
Well, the ones in the healthcare sector, I think they're the most promising.
And which one has you most worried?
The use of AI to intercede in democratic process.
More than warfare, more than AI's military application?
I think military people in general are very structured and rigorous, and the ones I'm talking to, of course, I'm not talking to all of them in all countries, but they're very cautious and mindful, and also wanting to innovate, but cautious about the way they introduce that in the military. So yes, of course, it's an area where we need to be very careful, but that's not an area where I see things just going with no one supervising it.
Personally, which application of AI have you used the most?
Well, I use chatbots a lot, of course. I particularly like these days because it changes, but Notebook LM, I think, is a great application. You can feed a piece of research, you can get extracts or response answers to questions, you can get podcasts. It's really a good one.
Yeah, even I use it a lot. In fact, I do create a lot of our summaries for our podcast using it also. Very effective. This is great. We end every podcast. I think we've run through the rapid fire segment, and you did exceptionally well. I think
Thank you.
that they were all over the place also. But
Mm-mm.
I want to end this podcast like I do others, which is to ask you for recommendations of other guests that you think we should have on this podcast, both in the lead up to the AI summit in Feb, but even post.
Mm. Yeah, well, a pleasure. I think it's. I remember when I was putting together the Paris summit, recommendations from people that I didn't necessarily know from other countries. That was always very helpful. There's a Canadian startup called Cohere. Joël Pinault, who used to be the head of AI research at Meta, is now the chief AI officer at Cohere. She would be a great invitee. There's a startup in Japan called Sakana AI. It's very interesting. You could invite, for example, Ren Ito from Sakana AI. I also think that the whole field of AI for defense is a very interesting field. And there's a number of key actors. And there's this German company, Helsing, that does AI-driven defense services and products. I think they'd be very interested to invite. Well, that's already 3.
And people from the global south?
Yes. So there's a number of great, wonderful ministers. Minister Teo from Singapore, Minister from Togo, Celia Lawson is great. There's a number of people from NGOs that you could invite as well. There's, and I'm happy to think about this more. If you want to get some suggestions of people, with pleasure.
Yeah, that'd be great, because as I think we've discussed throughout this podcast conversation,
Yes.
you want to make the conversations and agenda shaping, I think, as inclusive as possible. But this has been wonderful, Anne. Thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you.
the time. I know
You're
we
very welcome.
covered things from the Paris summit to the India summit to broad macro questions about AI to personal questions about AI. So thank you for sharing your thoughts, your insights, and thank you for all that you're doing in the field of AI.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing you at the AI Impact Summit then.
Yes, look forward to seeing you in Delhi very soon.
Thank you.